All right. Okay. Okay. Come on. Right. Now we have Lisa. She's going to be back on the stage. I think you're sitting on the first chair. Then we have Susanna Pachakova. Susanna, are you here? Good. Would like to come forward. Artistic Director, Festival of the White Knights, Košice 2013, which is European Capital of Culture. Then we have Johan, who was here yesterday and spoke yesterday. Johan Paduch, from the City Councillor from the City of Salzburg. Then we have Ernst Reiner, Institute of Urban Planning, who was also here yesterday, and the moderator. Thank you for coming. Then we have Markus Bogensborger, yes, Director of Haus der Architektur. And then we have Rob and Jerome, two of our artists who are working with sound and music. And from the Netherlands, would you like to come and join the panel? Okay.
Yes, and then we also welcome the Vice Mayor of the City of Graz, Mrs. Martina Schröck.
Ah, okay, right. Where are you there? Are you want to come and join us? Are you sure? Okay, you just take notes then, and we'll ask you if you understood at the end. Okay. So, right. Well, I know it's written here very dogmatically. It's written that what place does public art have in the daily lives of citizens? Which places are private and public? But of course, we can be a bit broader than that. You don't have to all say the same thing to the same question. So if you want to expand a bit on that, that's absolutely fine. But of course, it would be good to talk about the role of art in the city and for the citizens. I mean, that is obviously a good starting point, but of course, expand on it how you want. So maybe just an opening statement, a couple of minutes, or whatever you feel like, to get some agendas on, and then we'll come back and go at it a bit. Is that all right? And have you got the microphone? Yes. And is it on? Yes. Okay. And you know exactly what to say. No?
I hope so. I hope so.
Yes, it's okay. All right.
Thank you for your very good summary of all those complex questions we have to deal if we want to go into a cultural planning. So there were some ideas. And I want to pick up one word I was thinking of. And I want to come from a feministic perspective on the topic neighborhood and the interference of public space and private space. As feminist theoreticals and people who have worked with this know, there was one word that was said, public and a private is of public interest. And what I'm thinking about is the space between private and public, because we are talking about an area where we are building neighborhood. And one of the topics politicians, especially on a municipality area, are confronted with conflicts. And if there are possibilities and chances to learn how to deal with conflicts, it's the neighborhood where you can have the first possibilities to deal with the conflicts, because a city is constructed of conflicts and we have to find ways to deal with it. We will not bring them to disappear, but we will have to find solutions. So I will talk about the space between private and public space. This is the space, the foregarden. It's the space before the door of the flat. It's the space in the inner space between the houses. We call it Innenhof. It's the space. Maybe it's also the space in the car. Maybe it's also the space in the internet, because it's also very transition. It's always a transition between private and public. If it's possible to make or to build smooth transition spaces between public and between private and public space, I guess it will be possible to create places, as you told, as the difference between spaces and places, where people have the possibility to decide if they want to interact or not. I'm talking about the little sitting place before your flat. If it's possible, because the fire police is always talking about that it's not possible to have some furniture out of the flat, but if it's possible to have space between, to act in the real public, it's necessary to have the possibility, if you want, to act with your neighbor. And that's also a possibility if you plan houses, if you plan spaces, if you plan surroundings of livinghood, of future livinghood, to think about this question. That's just one idea I want to bring in, and I think that a cultural planning has a better chance to see this, because we are talking about behavior, we are talking about interacting, we talk about communication, and it's not a technological way how we can solve it. We have to think about also what you mentioned, the flowing, and the possibility to have how would I describe it in English? Die Möglichkeit, sich einzumischen oder nicht, hineinzubegeben oder nicht, und das immer wieder neu entscheiden zu können. To have a
So you mean a kind of respect for the values of the place, or the identity of the place? Yeah.
And to have the possibility to close the door or to have it open. I think to let the door open is a possibility, the same. And if this is, and that's also built on trust and all the things you mentioned. Okay, that's the end.
That's good.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
For the first time.
First of all, I have to say I have to speak in German, because my English is really not tough enough for this discussion.
Okay.
Second, our timetable is destroyed, so we have to leave at latest in 20 minutes from here. Und um jetzt ins Deutsche zu wechseln, möchte ich auch noch vorausschicken, dass ich ein sehr kunstaffiner Mensch bin, aber letztlich keine Ahnung davon habe. Was ich kann, ist Ihnen berichten über 2 Projekte in Salzburg, ein eher sehr spektakuläres, mit sehr viel Diskussion, mit sehr viel Konflikt, mit sehr viel Widerspruch, aber auch ein sehr herkömmliches, wenn man so will. Also dieses Projekt ist ein privat finanziertes von der sogenannten Salzburg Foundation, heißt heute Walk of Modern Art und hatte in einem 10-jährigen Programm das Ziel, jedes Jahr ein Objekt, ein Kunstwerk eines international bekannten Künstlers auf einem speziellen Ort oder für einen speziellen Ort in Salzburg zu produzieren und aufzustellen. Das ist heute ein Walk of Modern Art.
You just stop for a second. Okay. So first of all, I would like to say that I like culture very much, but I have absolutely no idea about it. I would like to talk about 2 projects in Salzburg, 2 spectacular projects that came with a lot of discussion, conflict, and contradiction. And this is a privately financed project called the Walk of Modern Art. The idea was to produce and to show 1 object per year in a period of 10 years.
Ja, und wir haben heute 12 Objekte insgesamt stehen auf verschiedenen Plätzen. Es begann mit Mario Merz, die Ziffern im Wald, es ging weiter mit Amsel Kiefer am Max-Reinhardt-Platz. Es folgte die Mariana Abramovic. Wir haben ein Werk von Stefan Balkenhol. Wir haben auch von österreichischen Künstlern Werke stehen, von Brigitte Kowans beispielsweise, ein sehr wirklich schönes Projekt, das an den Tod vieler Kriegsgefangener, die für die Zwangsarbeit lukriert waren, erinnern soll am Staatsbrückenkopf. Bei jedem dieser Objekte gab es einen irrwitzigen Aufstand in der Stadt, sowohl in der politischen Diskussion als auch mit der Bürgerschaft und innerhalb der Bürgerschaft, aber letztlich konnten wir mit viel Diskussion dieses Projekt realisieren.
So today we have 12 objects showed on different places and squares in the city of Salzburg. One of which, for instance, memorizes the death of a lot of war prisoners. Each of these projects was opposed violently in politics and in public, but finally we managed to agree and to set up this show.
Das zweite Projekt ist ein deutlich weniger spektakuläres, passt aber besser in den Kontext, den wir jetzt gerade die letzte halbe Stunde gehört haben. Es ist ein Projekt, das ich so interpretiere, dass Kunst auch zur Ergänzung oder zur Korrektur bestimmter urbaner Bereiche eingesetzt werden kann. Und zwar haben wir in Salzburg ja in den letzten Jahren das Stadtwerk realisiert, ein sehr komplexes, sehr urbanes Stadtquartier mit sehr viel Arbeitsplätzen und sehr viel Wohnungen. Und im Nachhinein wurde ein Wettbewerb ausgeschrieben für Kunst im Stadtwerk und gewonnen hat nicht ein bestimmtes Objekt oder eine bestimmte Installation, sondern gewonnen hat ein Konzept für einen Prozess, der gemeinsam mit den Bewohnern und den Nutzern des Areals umgesetzt werden soll und bei dem es darum geht, das, was als Defizit erlebt wird, zu wenig Grün, zu wenig Buntheit, zu wenig Sichtbarkeit der unterschiedlichen Kulturen, die in diesem Areal leben, das im Nachhinein umzusetzen, und die ersten Schritte werden in Kürze erfolgen, und das geht von der Anlegung von Lavendelfeldern über Wandteppiche an den Außenfassaden und dann von den Balkonen bis zu Stuhlinstallationen im öffentlichen Raum. Also ein sehr spannendes Projekt, aber deutlich weniger spektakulär als das erste.
The second project is a little bit less spectacular, but it probably meets today's topic much better. And this focuses on art as a mean to correct urban areas. For instance, the service center in Salzburg was finished. It offered a lot of jobs, offered a lot of flats. But then after the service center has been opened, there was a tender named Art in Service Center. And the winner was a concept that realized together with tenants and users, in cooperation with the tenants and users, to set up an art project whose goal it was to point out the cultural mix and to create more green zones with the help of beds, chairs in public areas, carpets on walls, and similar things.
Yes, well, Mr. Travis, you have shown us at the beginning that the heart of the city is the public spaces. And I would like to speak with the experts here now, how it's possible that we could mobilize the different artists from the cities and the power from the city to engage the people and the citizens by building up new areas like Reininghaus here. I think we have to combine this dynamic power of the citizens to build up a new quality of city development. And maybe we have to open our mind in the traditional way of thinking of urban planning maybe we have to open our mind of in a new way of to build up a network to involve the citizens by this process. That would be my statement.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we initially had the task to have a 3-minute statement, and starting with a personal view why we are interested in the Reininghaus project. So I'll try to keep in this framework.
Yeah.
But I think that also the Reininghaus initiative, and it's also my the driving force, is that we think that Reininghaus is really big enough to have some impact on this area, on Graz. Yeah. And if we, for myself, I like to live here. I love to live in Graz. Yeah. So I think, but this could be a spot which adds some energy, which is we are still lacking. Yeah. And this is a very interesting point in my view. And basically, I think that we all just have to do what you stated in your great lecture. Yeah. This is everything is. You mentioned everything we should do in a way, but I don't think that we also the professional audience is aware of these things. Yeah, cultural plannings is from the architectural community. Nobody thinks about this in a way. Yeah, and if we think about Graz, we are just trying to establish smart cities. Yeah, which is already dead in a way. Yeah. And we're trying to be a creative city, which is also ridiculous in a way. So there's a lot of work to do in this sense, I think, and it's very interesting. Also, if you look at it from a historic point of view, yeah, how urban planning and design evolved over hundreds, thousands of years. Yeah, and we don't have a kind of theory of urban design at the moment.
No.
This is it's stopped in the late 70s, early 80s when the modernist project was skipped or proved to have failed. And Rem Koolhaas said in 1995, whatever happened to urbanism, and nothing followed really. Yeah, and the kind of cultural planning evolved from an architectural point of view, not from an artistic artist point of view, around 2000. Also, the in situ development is also in this kind of time frame. Yeah, but it's still in a not. Maybe you showed examples which work, but it's still not got touch with the other world, with the world of regulations and methods and these kind of things, which it has to connect someday, because otherwise it's just a special feature of some people who are powering themselves out in a way. So this is a very interesting question from our point of view. Thank you.
So maybe I can speak about the Slovakian public art model, because it's this topic is a very new topic in Slovakia, because the citizens and the city before 2014 and before to have the title of European Capital of Culture were not able or not used to speak about public art and public space. So the project of European Capital of Culture in 2030 was really concentrated and based on this topic, because we must to make a lot of reconstructions of public space, of public parks, public places, and also to build a new cultural infrastructure in the city. But I think that there was not a lot of dialogues with the citizens, and we have now some barrier between the city, the culture operators, and the citizens. Because now we have a lot of nice spaces, but I think the people don't know to use it. And for example, we must to organize a lot of basic actions in the public space, like picnics in the park. It must be some events because the people don't know that they can go to the park and have some picnics. So we are really in the base of development of the public space. So there are different topics, I think, in our situation. But we can see the real changement after in this period, and it's for that we organize a lot of festivals in public space, and there are real work with the artists and architects and sociologists who try to explain the importance of a public space, and we must to show the different modes to use it and to keep it that like a private space, because the people prefer to be enclosed in the private space and not use the public space. So we must to work on this topic.
Hello, I'm Rob. I'm a composer, and this is my colleague Jeroen. I'll explain a little bit why we are here. We are composers. Many years back, we wrote music for a concert hall, you could say. But over the years, we transformed actually to doing pieces in public space. So it's more like we were getting more involved in creating situations which are more realistic, while a concert hall is a setup. And while doing this movement, we created installations and performances in public space, which closes the differences between this art form and the reality. And so we create installations where people have to walk through, where sound is all around you. So we actually are planning an urban space, but then from the music and the sound spectrum. And so we have done a lot of research by doing these installations, and now we are invited here by Werner to do an installation, and it's already here. It's virtual. You can walk it. And what we also did in this transformation is we changed the relationship with the community, with the inhabitants, with our public. And we did that by interviewing them, and we are using this material to write music. So we record it, and the spoken word is part of our music. And this way we kind of can recreate a city, and all the ideas and perspectives that lie under the surface, we bring them up. So now when you walk around here, you'll hear music, and you'll hear different stories of people about this environment. And added with music, thus emotion is a very powerful tool to have people make more, have a different consciousness about what's possible.
Good. I think I'd like to just take that as a point of departure and talk about, and as you say, Lisa, there is private space, there's public space, but there's this in-between space. And the in-between space is transitional sometimes, and it's sometimes also a community space, but it's defined by the act of people or the constant use of them, and it has somehow it is their territory. So we can also talk about spaces as being territories, where those territories are either protected or open or dominated or whatever. But it is a power thing, it is a user's thing, and it's a thing about rights. You have the rights, they may be written down, but you have the front. In the old days, in the olden days, and we can talk about that, before Osmani cars, when kids used to play in the street. That was an obvious thing which you don't do now because it's a public space. But before, actually, it was the neighborhood say it was our street. So, I mean, these kind of definitions do change with time. And I think that's also something which is relevant. What you were saying, Susanna, is because there is no in-between space. There is no sense where you are comfortable, and you're not comfortable to be in the agoraphobia of the outdoor space, because there are video cameras, because you have the memory of how things used to be and used to be photographed, and you just didn't go outside where you didn't speak freely. So there's this legacy which you can't get rid of. There is no intermediary space which you can create together. And these spaces are the most potential, and they're also spaces of negotiation, because there you negotiate, and you have to negotiate on being a citizen. What do you accept, what you don't accept, what times, how noisy it is, and whatever. And these are things which is not written down, but it develops around a practice, an acceptance, and an acceptance of diversity or whatever. So this is the most interesting, the most dynamic spheres actually in the city. More of these spaces, these transitional zones. And I think what you're saying is that these spaces also can be curated, they can be adapted, they can be formed, and they can be given meaning. For example, by the work you do, which is actually giving this place meaning and reflection another level. So in all, because those are, you might say, territories which are taken over by artists for a time and given another meaning, and in a way you protect them or you establish them as being something else, a platform, a voice. I'd like to come back to you. So this idea, do you have, and what I'd like to ask you in a way is, do you in your cultural planning or your cultural plans also have spatial plans for culture, or is it institutions and art forms, or do you actually work with spatial plans in your cultural planning?
Thank you. It's a good possibility to discuss at this place, Reininghaus, because here we make, for me, because I'm not so long for cultural affairs responsible for this topic, but for me it's the first possibility to make this Erfahrung, experience, thank you, experience to try to make a planning that is a cross-planning between interdisciplinarity, and this is what is now the Stadtdenkerinnen Reiningherz is one of the first, for me it's an experiment in Graz at a very, when it will happen here and when it will bring a good result, it will be really very important for the whole city, because here this is a space that's the most famous space where we can do something. So I think it's very important that we have different views on it, if you mean, if that's what you mean. And I think there is a possibility at the moment in Graz, and and what my role is to give a framework and to give it together. And so we have to talk a lot, but it's going on in this case.
And the architecture is not usually, and design not usually in the brief of the cultural sector. Somehow it gets lost because it's also an industry or it's also urbanism. But do you have actually a brief for architecture and design within the cultural plan? Because public art is both architecture, because depending what it is, it's also art and it's actually also environment. But where does public art fit in your structure? Or would it be possible to make because that might be a good point, to make a separate, you might say, commission or whatever on the role of public art and develop public art in the context both of architecture and urbanism, but also in the context of art. So how does public art fit into your decision making, and do you have a policy for public art, and do you have funds for it?
I think it's something that is in the moment of being built now, because if you're talking with Markus from the House of Architecture, they are involved. So this is a discussion that's just going on now, how it can be a future option to make new processes in the future in a new way. So I don't know what will be the result, but I think you discuss a lot of it. And as I see, the program of HDA is also a program that's dealing with questions of art and vice versa. So it's not sexual thinking that's going on, and that's the main thing, that it's intersectional, and then maybe the result can be an intersectional space of living.
Ernst, do you want to say something?
We have, my opinion is that it's not easy in Austria to build up this open network, this open strategies for city development, because we have no tradition in this way.
Yeah.
Maybe we have seen it by the Scandinavian cities, like also like Copenhagen or so, that the involvement, the citizen involvement, also the involvement of the cultural activities in the cities, this is a tradition. Yeah, and maybe we have to see to this traditions. Maybe we have to learn because we have always in Austria traditional chambers of architecture and so on, and this is not a dynamic background for a city. You have made the mention at the beginning at the domino effect. The domino effect is a dynamic effect. Maybe I miss here for the city in the western part of Graz, maybe the competition of ideas. Yeah? We have to open all minds. Yeah?
Yes.
Not only a traditional universities and so on, we have to open all minds. Maybe we have started the smart city project here in Graz is different to all other projects here in Austria, because we have installed in the planning process a city lab to open the mind of the citizens.
Okay.
But it's on the beginning,
Yeah.
it's the first step.
Okay.
And my opinion is that we have to make other steps and to build up a network, and maybe we have to build up the possibility to combine with other networks here in maybe in Graz, maybe also with networks in Europe.
Yeah. Would you like to say something?
Yeah, the state of Styria, for example, has an institute for public art, which do a great job in a way.
Okay.
But the things they are doing are not politically intentional in a way, because it's not also their mission. Yeah, so they can't develop or place political or social political issues, because it's not their agenda in a way. Yeah, so we don't have this. It's almost a little bit looking back the art which is produced in public places. Yeah, not trying to bring new intentions into the discourse.
Well, it's often the case with you might say official public art. It is very difficult to be other than either retrospective or high quality, and it tends to become very representational and traditional. But yes, of course.
I have just one small sentence about the role of politics in this process.
Yeah.
When we started to discuss that Reininghaus development can be interfered with cultural aspects, the first idea in the answer were, okay, we will make some art in public space there. Yes, the first answers. And to get to the step that it's not a question of some sculptural things in the public space here, it's just the involvement into how it will be built, how it will be, also how the decision is made about the power here, also how it will be installed. Wie die Machtstrukturen oder wie die Strukturen hier ausschauen. Also it is small. Yes. The power structure. That it's necessary to think in all decisions about the cultural impact, and not only about art as sculptural form. And the other thing is that arts has to have its space in a temporary way, as you already mentioned, and also in a long-term way. So these are the two perspectives, and in the political discussion, it's very important to have this as chance, and not only to talk in the end about some artworks for having space.
Clear.
Here.
I mean, it's clear when I talk about art in public space, it's all kinds of art. It can be also digital art. It can also be soundscapes. It can also be interventions. It can also be whatever. So we're talking in we're also talking artistic processes, as you say.
It's about the process.
It's that process of creation.
Yes, it's
creating in public space. It's creating something new. So I think I think that terminology could certainly be part of public art, you might say, criteria or domain.
It's experimental form of planning.
Yes,
That's
yes,
the way.
yes. Yeah. Yes. Tell
Just
me
a
one
few
sentence
words,
from the audience. We've forgotten you were there.
Just
Sorry,
just
I was
a few
told no
words
questions.
Concerning the money, because it was very important for Lisa to have some money
No,
from
let's
the
don't talk
investors
about money. Let's don't
for
talk about
culture.
money.
And so, as I told you yesterday, we made these contracts with the developers and with the investors. And we have this regulation that we get €2 per square meter for culture belongings. So if someone builds about 40,000 square meters flats, we get 80,000 euros, or 160,000 for an area like this. It's free for what?
And when you say
initiative,
we get it. Who gets it?
It's the cultural department.
And what do you do
who
with
is
that
responsible?
Money?
And as a politician, Lisa Rücker will be responsible.
Okay.
What they do with the money. So they are free, but they have to pay. Just your question for belonging the money.
Have you also got a percentage of the land use which should be reserved for cultural, you might say, functions in the long term?
I would tell in the next session, we have
safeguard.
a large public space. And there it should be, or in front of the house, or also it's all accepted, also in the same public space, semi-public space. But they are free.
Yeah, but what about the built areas? Do you have a percentage there about the usage?
Yes, of course.
To safeguard that some cultural activities can find their base here?
The investors are also free to put the money in their houses if they want, but it has to be accepted from the cultural department.
So it's no.
In the competition.
So it's no. The answer is no?
No.
All right, okay.
There are no percentages. There are no percentages at the moment, but there are areas we are talking about that they are preserved for cultural activity, and we are talking with the investors about these specific spaces already.
Because
for production, for presentation, for concerts, for all these things we are talking about. But it's one of the aspects.
Yeah. But it could be, it's quite normal to build in both a percentage of the square meters, but also at a reduced rate, because the advantage is here. You have an owner who's going to keep the area and rent it. So he can also calculate on the rents, and he can also make rents which are not just market driven, but actually, and not just subsidize social housing, but actually you can subsidize also a particular kind of users. So you actually support your cultural policy by allowing cultural institutions in at a lower rate, for example. I mean, there are different ways. Are we running on? We are over time now. I'm sorry. Does anybody? You want to say a last? Yeah, come on, go for it. Yeah.
Maybe I hope that this discussion is the beginning of this strategy this year for the western part of the city of Graz. Maybe it's the possibility to start this network from this point up. I hope that it would be the starting point for this for the future of this.
All right. Well,
of the city.
We'll see at the end of the day. If there's anybody left. Okay, good. Thank you.